Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Liam and today we're going to be talking about 5 things that paganism has taught me. Now, when I say 5 things that paganism has taught me, I don't necessarily mean that these are things that you can only learn through paganism, and they're certainly not any tenets of paganism or anything like that. However, they are things that I have learned through my personal practice and my journey throughout paganism over the years. Um, there are more than 5 things, obviously, but I'm going to try and keep it simple. We're going to start with 5, which are probably some big ones. So I suppose the first thing that I've learned is how to connect with this relationship of life and death. Now, I think it's quite fair to say that most, if not all, religions are designed in some way to kind of tackle our understanding or lack of understanding and our fear of death. Most religions have some sort of concept of what happens to us after we die. In some religions, obviously, that's kind of the major point. I don't think paganism is any different. If you look at historical pagan religions, most of them had a concept of an afterlife as well. But what I guess I've really learned is that every day really is a blessing. And I know that sounds very kind of like new agey and hippy dippy, but it is true if you think about it. The odds of any one of us even being here in the first place are amazing. The amount of people who will never be born because of circumstances being one way rather than another are incredible. Any one slight variation in the circumstances of our ancestry, our environment, anything being slightly different to what it was, before, during, or after our conception, could mean something very different for a lot of us. So in that respect, one thing that I've learned is that you shouldn't be complacent. Every day is a blessing. Something that I now try to do is make sure that I celebrate birthdays. Even getting older as I am, a lot of people are very cynical about that sort of thing, but I like to use not just my own birthday but other people's birthdays as proper ritual moments of, no, you're here and you've been here for this length of time, you've survived yet another year, and that's really important. It's really important that we commemorate things like that. And on the flip side, death is just a bigger part of life as the things that happen to us throughout our lives. I don't think it's something that we'll ever understand as much as we try and as much as religions try to understand it. It's something that I personally feel we can never really truly experience until it happens to us, in which case it's kind of too late to tell anybody else what's happening to us. However, I think it's really important that we learn while we're still here to become comfortable with the idea of what it means to no longer be here. It's a hard pill to swallow, but the truth is obviously that it comes to all of us. And having lost people, especially the last couple of years, that's easier said than done. But learning to understand that actually nobody can live forever, nothing can continue forever, and actually if people didn't die, we would very quickly be overrun on this planet, though some people might argue that we already are. Things give way to bring new life. We can see it in the cycles of nature moving around us. Trees drop their leaves in autumn, so that more things can grow come spring. And learning to be comfortable with it means something different for everybody, I guess. But for me, what it means is that as scary as it can be, as sad as it can be, learning to just accept that death is, and there's no intent behind it. There's nobody floating around in the sky deciding who's going to die and when and how. That for me has been a real transformation in the way that I view the cycle of life and death, and I think a really important one as well. Learning that you lose a loved one, there's nobody to blame for it, unless there is, which is a different story. But you if you were to lose someone through natural means, you can't be angry at the universe, you can't be blaming God for it. It's a cycle, and it comes and it goes, just like everything else. I suppose number 2 is I've learned how to reconfigure what I understand is real and what is not. So what is real and what isn't? And it's something that I think that religious people, particularly pagans and witches and heathens, will probably have to deal with more on a everyday basis than potentially other religions and non-religious people. And what I mean by that is, you will always get the silly questions when people find out that you practice ritual and magic of some description. Oh, is it like Harry Potter? Is it like this? Is it like that? Do you really believe that you can do this and you can make that happen, and etc.? You've probably all heard it if you've been around for any length of time. And I always find it a really interesting discussion, not even just with people who don't believe in it, but in people who do, because the way that people see it is different quite often. Now, what I mean by what is real and what isn't is that I've actually learned along the way that those questions are not that important. So let's take magic, for example. The concept of casting spells, forming ritual, and making change. I guess you could include prayers in that as well. Does it matter whether it's real or not? Does it matter whether I believe I can do something or not? Not necessarily. What does matter is whether it works or not. So, for example, you cast a spell with a certain aim for this change to happen, and that change happens. Now, to you, it might be that it's the magic that's done that. To the next person, it might be that a psychological change has occurred. To the next person, it might be pure coincidence. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Did it work? Did the spell work? Is it real? Who cares? When I have interactions with deity and it causes something to change in my life for whatever reason, is it because a entity came into my life and did something, or is it because, again, I had a psychological shift? Does it matter? No, it doesn't. So in some respects, whether something is real or not, it doesn't matter. It's not an important question. Does it work for you? On the other hand, what I've also learned about what is real and what is not is that sometimes it is important. I'm a very massive supporter of people's creativity, people creating, including mythology and poetry and stories about anything. However, I do think it's really important to be accurate when we're discussing historical events. That's a subject that we'll discuss in a different video probably. But usually speaking, whether something is real or not isn't important. And then number 3, I suppose, is I really learned a lot about how I interact with other people and how people interact with each other. Now, it's easy to think, maybe maybe it's just me, but it's easy to think when you first kind of enter into sort of pagan circles, or when you first enter into spiritual circles. I guess you could make the argument for other religions as well, that everything is all love and light, and everybody is nice because they are spiritual, and everybody has good intentions. And that is just not the case. And it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in, it doesn't matter what religion we're talking about, there are always good people, and there are always people who do things that are considered not to be good. I don't really like to use the word or the term bad people. I believe that people do good things, and I believe that people do bad things. However, just for the ease of this conversation, I will use the term. There are bad people in every walk of life. And this became evident to me quite early on in my journey in paganism, but it's easy to be caught up in the crystals and the shimmering lights, and to not be able to see that. You need to be very careful, even within our circles, about who you trust with your time, with your energy, and with your association. It's very easy to become associated with people that perhaps you actually wouldn't want to be. It's something that isn't spoken about, I don't think, enough in pagan circles, but there are predators within our circles, like there are in all circles, and there are, you know, people within our circles that I would not associate with. Paganism in particular, northern traditions especially, have a massive problem with racism, and a massive problem with white supremacy, and it's something that just isn't challenged enough. However, I don't want my name being associated with people who believe those sorts of things, but if you were a little bit more naive and you weren't aware of those things, and you started to get involved in with certain groups, you might not know that you were being associated with that sort of thing until it was kind of too late. So always be on your guard, even within circles where you're led to believe that everybody is lovely, because it's not always the case. You need to use your common sense, and not just think that everybody is going to be like you because they are quote unquote spiritual. It's not true. And number 4 is something that I learned, I think, probably once I started studying Druidry about 7 or 8 years ago now, and it is the importance of Arwen. Now, Arwen is a central concept to Druidry, and if you don't know, basically what Arwen is the notion that when we get a sort of creative injection, when a thought, have you ever had a creative thought just appear kind of like fully formed in your head, whether it be, I don't know, a story or a song, or if you're an artist you might see a painting before you paint it, or have you ever had like ever woken up in the middle of the night and had to like write down a feverish plot for I don't know, a book that you were writing, because it's all just come fully formed into your head. The concept of Arwen is that those moments of inspiration are divine. I think, you know, another way of looking at it is the fire in the head. It's a divine creativity that comes to us kind of almost through other means, and that has become really important to me over the years, to the point where when I have one of those moments and I sit and I write a poem, for instance, to me it's the feeling is almost the same as performing ritual. It's become a recognition that creating is divine. If you look around us at everything else that creates in this world, you know, the acorn falling from the tree and growing into another tree, you know, mothers growing babies in their wombs, these things are divine. And it is the same thing when we create something that seems to have just appeared in our heads and then is put out there into the world, whatever form that takes. That is just as much a reflection of our divine nature and our ability to worship as sitting and performing lengthy ritual, in my opinion, anyway. And number 5 kind of relates to the good and bad people, kind of, and hopefully it'll make sense after I've said it. But number 5, I think that another important thing that I've learned is that being, whatever word you want to use, religious, spiritual, magical, whatever word you want to use, but being that doesn't mean you have to behave a certain way all the time. So I remember having a conversation once years ago when I worked in the prison service as a pagan chaplain, and I was speaking to a Buddhist chaplain who couldn't understand why I held a certain, I don't think I can talk about the details, but I held a certain opinion about something that was happening in the establishment. And my reaction to expressing that opinion was quite forthright, and I was quite stern about it, and I probably used a few choice words because I do have a bit of a foul mouth sometimes. And this individual, considered my reaction to be unspiritual. And my answer to that is, well, what is spiritual and what is unspiritual? Because actually, in my opinion, the most spiritual thing I could have done in that instance is be truthful and not allow my opinion to be swatted down because I wasn't firm enough in my conviction. You know, being a spiritual person doesn't mean that we're all prancing around in fields and playing with crystals and namasteing everybody all day, every day. That's not the case. Sometimes you have to be hard, and sometimes you have to be firm, and sometimes you have to tell someone to go take a running jump off the nearest fucking cliff, because being spiritual, being kind to other people is obviously important. And if you have no reason not to be kind to if you have no reason not to be kind to somebody, you should obviously not do that. You should be kind if the occasion calls for it. But you should also be kind to yourself. And sometimes that means standing up for yourself. And sometimes that means swearing at people. And sometimes it means telling people that what they're doing is not appropriate and you don't appreciate the way that they are talking to you or they're behaving towards you. And that's, I think, a really important lesson that I see a lot of people struggling with in spiritual circles, especially on social media. It's all about this perception, this love and light perception, and actually sometimes that's just not the right way to go for anybody. So do yourselves a favour and be honest with people. And in my, like I say, in my opinion, that is actually more spiritual than putting on this false perception of what it's like to be a real human being. We are all real human beings, and we all have emotions, and we all have things that we all have opinions and things that we want to say and should be able to say. Doesn't mean, you know, it should be a free-for-all. Obviously there are some things that are not probably appropriate in certain circumstances, but again, it's about using your common sense, but not hiding behind that facade of what you think it looks like or what you think we should behave like, just because we are engaged in a spiritual practice. Okay, so hopefully this wasn't too rambly or too long. Like I say, it's only a snippet, 5 sort of the more important lessons I think that I've learned over the years. If this video is enjoyed, I might well do another one in the future. But I think that's it for now. Thank you for watching. If you are enjoying my videos, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Goodbye.